In this episode, we are focusing on postpartum exercise with Dr. Lindsey Mathews Cantu. Lindsey is committed to supporting women in the various seasons of their lives. She started BirthFit in 2013 with a deep belief that movement can be the bridge to cultivate our own intuition and a trust in our bodies. Lindsey is a nervous system based chiropractor, Mercier Therapist, birth doula, NLP practitioner, and strength and conditioning coach. Through all of the hats she wears in this world, she created BirthFit as she saw a huge gap for sustainable nervous system-based movement and training for women in all chapters and cycles of their lives, specifically cycling, preconception, pregnant, and postpartum women. Beyond BirthFit, Lindsey works in her chiropractic wellness practice, Willow Haus, that she co-founded with Dr. Bria and Matt Mutch. Majority, if not all of her clientele that she sees in her office are women in pediatrics, and in her spare time, Lindsey enjoys connecting with her husband Lance, working in her garden, and taking long, slow walks. Thank you so much for being here, Lindsey. I'm excited to cover this postpartum fitness topic with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. And, I'm stoked to get into this with you.
Yeah, I sent Lindsey a form before just to get all our information and her bio and everything and any topics people want to cover. And Lindsey had the best topics. So I was like, oh, these they really made me think. It was good. I feel like because I'm in that postpartum season now where my daughter's at the time of recording this 5 months, it's just it's a big transitional phase.
Yeah.
So it was good for me to be like, okay, these are really going to be helpful for women in any season of their postpartum. I would even think, if you never did any recovery postpartum, if you're 2 years postpartum, it'll all be helpful.
Absolutely.
Let's start with your background, because I'm sure people hearing me read that off were like, what? You have a diverse background. I mean, it makes sense. I feel like to me, it's like having the nervous system based chiropractic care, strength and conditioning. Like, what a beautiful, I feel like collection of knowledge to share with people. What made you focus on pregnancy and postpartum?
Well, just like we were talking about before, I had no idea what I wanted to be or, who I wanted to grow up into. And, when I reflect back on this question, because people ask me this all the time, I truly feel that I created BirthFit as part of my healing for my maternal lineage, even though I did not know it at the time. I knew from a young girl, very young age, that I wanted to be of service to this world. And that's all I knew. And I started out, going down the pre-med route at Texas A&M. And then I decided not to go to medical school based on an experience at medical mission trip in Africa. And that's when I made a pivot to chiropractic school. And that's when I started to wake up to, I would say it's the power inside of the body and the self-healing that we have, and at our fingertips. And by no means was I sold then. I was still on asthma medications. I was still on birth control. I was still on the standard American stuff. But, looking back, I know now why I created it, but then, for me at the time, I was actually a sports rehab chiropractor. And this was, I went to chiropractic school, focusing on sports, focusing on rehab, prehab. I would intern down at the Olympic Training Center because I was in Los Angeles at the time. And, I wanted to be on the sidelines. I wanted to be, at the biggest events. And I did. I graduated from chiropractic school. I joined 3 other gentlemen in practice, and we were an awesome team that was rotating between sets. On movies, we were rotating between athletic events. We were rotating just all over Los Angeles and doing all the Hollywood and sports things. And you would think that would be pretty exhilarating and fun. But it once I attended my first birth, I was like, oh, that's the event I need to be at. That's the sports performance I need to support. And, this all happened over the time span of a few years, but I started getting a lot of women in practice because the gentleman at the time did not know what to do. We in chiropractic school got 1 trimester of pregnancy and pediatrics. And we got more nutrition, more movement, more anything than somebody in that, standard medical doctor route. But still, I was like, I didn't learn any of this growing up. I had never seen my mom birth. I had never seen my mom breastfeed. I grew up pretty standard American as far as like diet, lifestyle, everything. And, I started thinking about just, the what's the possibility, what could be. And my eyes started opening whenever I just started asking questions. And there was a woman that she kind of started shifting my mindset. She came to me preconception and wanted to be in the best shape that she could be in to conceive. And so I started looking some stuff up, and she dabbled in like vegetarian, and I was like, well, I think you got to eat meat. So we went down that route. We started training in like all different planes of motions. We got adjustments once a week, and she conceived a little quicker than we thought she was going to conceive, because she wanted to conceive during her off season of her TV show. Long story short, she asked me, what's the most efficient way to give birth? And she didn't use those words, but that's what was going through in my head, because she wanted to come back for the next season of her TV career. I was like, well, so I started looking things up, and that's when I started doing doula training. And that was like really the only thing I could find as far as, what's going on in birth. There was an diplomat course for chiropractors, and I did all that, but there was only one weekend, like it's one weekend out of all the weekends that was dedicated to pregnancy. The rest were dedicated to pediatrics. So, I did doula training, and I came back to her, and this is like me being completely naive. I said, I think you have to have like an unmedicated birth, and you're going to heal quicker that way. And she was like, okay, let's do it. And I was like, okay. Um, so we don't know what we don't know. And this was like 2010, maybe 2011. And we were like, let's build the team, like that. I was thinking so totally in alignment, like what you would do with sports. Like you build the right team, you get the right players. I said, okay, we need a quarterback. Who's the quarterback? So that's either your OB or your midwife. I said, well, we probably need a midwife because they support physiological birth. Where an OB, they, all their tools are what they have. Like they're really good at operating and intervening, but I don't know that they necessarily support a physiological birth, a natural birth process. And so she was like, okay, we got a midwife, and we got a doula. And because at the time I was still practicing, I was like, I don't think I can commit to this. But I can commit to being a chiropractor. Even though I did the doula training, I was like, I don't know about this. So she ended up setting up this whole team, had a beautiful unmedicated birth. And she ended up doing a birth in the hospital with a midwife that still had privileges in LA. And because her husband was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
A little freaked out. But then after that, I was able to observe the whole process, saw her basically right before labor, went to her house right after labor, birth, started the healing process immediately. And I was like, oh my God, this is wild. Shortly after that, I attended my first birth. And that's when I was just like, oh my God, like I've never seen a woman like truly step into her power and own her power and just like surrender to the forces of nature. And with that, I was like, there is nothing else on earth that I want to do. And I want every woman to be able to experience this, And looking back and reflecting on my life, I realized that I was very disconnected from my mom, from my grandma. Didn't grow up, viewing the cycle as sacred. Didn't grow up honoring different seasons of our lives. Just grew up in super go mode, like achievement mode, productive mode. And when I saw this and started like kind of just processing and integrating it, I was like, if every woman knew they had the power inside of them, truly, nothing would be off limits for them. That like it's phenomenal just to see that and witness that and observe that. So that was kind of the origins, and from there I ended up taking every pregnancy postpartum course I could take. But like I was mentioning, there was really nothing available because this was like around 2010, 2011, and like over a decade ago. And so I did doula training. I did doula training twice to get two different teachers. And because the first time I doubted myself, second time,
Yeah.
okay, let's really do this. And since then I've done it like two more times just to have different, different experiences. And one of the events that stuck out to me early on, I did this course called Sacred Pregnancy, and we did a retreat, and there was like women that came from all over, but we met in Ojai and did a sweat lodge, got like super crunchy. Like it was my first introduction to crunchy. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. Like I haven't had any kids. I just really doubt myself. And there was an elder woman there that basically pulled me aside, and she was in her 60s, and she basically told me like, hey, I don't have any kids. All these children that I helped birth are my kids. And if you never have kids, it's okay, but you are called to do this. And so, that moment stuck with me like just like a lightning bolt in the heart. And it was a powerful experience. And then there were other trainings that were pretty monumental, like innate postpartum training was awesome. A bunch of doula certifications, Mercier. Anything that had pregnancy and postpartum on it, I took. I was like, I need to know more about this. So that was like the origins of it. And then I started being a doula, and I worked in two different birth centers in Los Angeles. I worked in one that was on the west side, which was run by a certified nurse midwife. And then I worked on the east side, and that was run by a certified professional midwife. So I got to see like the two different styles of midwifery. And then I had a great chiropractic mentor, Dr. Berlin, who was like one of the OGs as far as like prenatal chiropractic goes. And then I had a great mentor in Dr. Stu Fishbein, who's an out-of-hospital OB in Southern California. So I feel like I was taught by like some of the legendary living legends, that are still around, and that have helped pave the way for much of what you see on, social media today, and what, we as women have access to now.
It
So,
shows you how different it is now, right? Like being able to get all that information at your fingertips now, whereas like you had to take like dozens and dozens of
oh my
training
God, I
programs to
had to
even get an inch.
drive. Yeah. I had to drive places, like spend the night, hope for the best sort of thing, sleep in my car.
Oh my
But now
gosh.
you can take an online doula course, and you're done,
Oh, that's not the same though, I feel like.
Oh, totally
Um,
not. Yeah.
oh, that's really cool though. I was like curious too, because I was like, I know Lindsey doesn't have kids, but I would like never ask someone about that.
Yeah.
But I really like that's cool that that woman in that sweat lodge was like, you probably
Mm.
assumed she'd had kids,
I
right?
did. Yeah.
Yeah, and she didn't, and it just kind of shows you
Yeah.
you don't necessarily have to. I mean, I think it changes your experience a little bit, but
Absolutely.
seeing it, I think, is just like I saw my younger sister give birth,
Mm.
and it was life changing. And it's like
Life changing.
I'm like I cannot believe I was like I don't even know, maybe like third. I was like in my late 20s at the time when she gave birth,
Mm.
and I was like, I can't believe I've never seen this, and I'm this
Yeah.
old. Like it's
Yeah. That's
crazy.
exactly what I thought. I was
Yeah.
like, wait, we need to learn how to breastfeed. How do we do that? Like we didn't
Yeah.
learn that. I
I
was,
know.
oh, uh,
So it
so
is. I wish it was more normal. I think now that's gonna
absolutely.
change. I think there's like a whole revolution of women that are just like, I want better. I'm not gonna settle
Yeah,
for not knowing and not understanding, which is cool.
totally. And
Um,
they know that I feel like women are tapping into their intuition, and they're like, I know it's different. There's something different out there. So let me just embrace this curiosity and explore.
Yes. Even it doesn't have to be like maybe you choose to get an epidural or something.
Totally.
It's not so much about doing it perfectly. It's about having the knowledge and being your own advocate and making your own choices, I think, as you're going through that process. Very cool. It's so funny that it started with just like one of your clients that you were helping and working with, and then it kicked off.
She got the wheels turning. Yeah. And I think, it could have been anywhere, anytime. Like I was sharing, I think I did this as part of my healing.
Mm-hmm.
And, I used to like doodle, when I was doodling the name, I was doodling BirthFit, and it was way before I'd even tried CrossFit, which is wild. And then I was like, wait, there's this brilliant thing called CrossFit. What?
When did you find CrossFit?
I started doing CrossFit right around, it had to have been the end of 2011, 2012. Like when I actually took a class, because I used to be one of those chiropractors that was like, don't do CrossFit. It ruins you. You're going to get injured. But then when I took CrossFit and dove right in, because I'm like, okay, let me just learn as much as I can about this since I'm in here. So I took level 1, level 2. I took CrossFit weightlifting. I took CrossFit football. I took it all. And pose running. I was like, wait a sec. The deadlift doesn't hurt your back. Your shitty movement hurts your back. Okay, now I got this.
And every CrossFit gym is different, but everyone's had a different experience. I was curious though, because I'm like, I remember I met you during that time.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And we started at Deuce. So we started Deuce in the park in Santa Monica, and then finally found a spot in Venice, and that's when we opened Deuce. But
oh man, it's so crazy. Even like having things come full circle now. And so you talked about like you saw your first birth, and it obviously completely changed you. I don't know. I cannot imagine anyone not being changed by witnessing birth. And I think you can see like, it's just so like, you're just never the same in the best way, in like really hard ways too. I think it took me a while to like be okay with like that I had such a painful birth. But I'm still like, I did it. I just did it and got through it. And it just, to me, it wasn't like a negative experience, but I do think like, I'll never be the same. There's so many ways my body is the same, which is like cool and like fun, but then there's so many ways that it's different. And I just think like reconnecting with your body postpartum is so important. And a lot of women, obviously they want more information on like exercise and fitness, which we will get into. We have a ton of Instagram questions, but I'm curious, like, I think before you can exercise, you have to reconnect with your body.
God. Yeah.
So can you talk about like how new moms can start doing that once they have their babies?
Oh yeah. So one of the biggest, or two of the biggest words that come up for me postpartum are integration and grounding. And if you like take a step back and you start to view the human nervous system, like when we go through these experiences, like birth, or, maybe you've been in a motor vehicle accident, or you've gone through a big breakup, a big move across country. These are big, experiences for your nervous system. And we need these challenges, like a workout, strength and conditioning, CrossFit training, a cycle class, whatever. All of that is basically stimulating your nervous system to adapt. And we need those basically to make us more resilient, to make us stronger, faster, harder to kill, anything like, but I like the word resilient. And so one of the things I like to say and remind moms, especially if we start the whole journey together, like preconception, pregnancy, and then postpartum, is like, baby's a hitchhiker on your nervous system. And excuse me, so their first experience with the world is through your thoughts and emotions and behavior, your movement patterns. They're picking up on your movement patterns. They're picking up on your energy. They're picking up on, what you feel when your mother-in-law comes into the room, or what you feel when, you sit out in the sunshine and you're just like, letting everything go. They feel all that. You both go through labor, birth, cesarean, whatever the birth experience is, you both go through that together. And one of the other things, like you'll see, I find things that I like to say and I say them over and over again. But, mom and baby have guaranteed tickets for birth. And you can relate this to like a roller coaster ride. You two have tickets to that roller coaster ride. And I'd love it if your doula made it, if your OB or your midwife, your husband, partner, whoever, I'd love it if all the team made it, but maybe not. Sometimes birth happens like super fast and you two are the only ones guaranteed tickets to that experience. And you have within your capacity all the tools you need. You have breath, sound, and movement available. And so you're going to do the dance of labor. You're going to go through the birth experience together. And I often say it's like climbing a mountain, and mom's got to climb this mountain and everybody's helping her up, and she gets to the peak of this mountain. And when she's at the peak of the mountain, she's got to reach through to this other dimension, as you probably felt, and pull this life earth side. And now they got to come back down this mountain. And in our society, our culture, we don't do a very good job of postpartum nourishment, postpartum support, postpartum anything. There's no standard of care postpartum. We just tend to push moms and their babes down this mountain and say, roll down the mountain, good luck. We'll see you at 6 weeks, which is probably the appointment right at the bottom. And so, part of coming back into life is that grounding, that integration as you step one step at a time back down this mountain. And sometimes it takes women 30 days. Sometimes it takes women 9 months. There's no timeline to kind of fully embody your physical body again, but there needs to be a grounding and integration that happens. And, it's a slowness, it's a stillness, it's, soft. And I'm putting my hands on my shoulders, like a soft, just firm contact. And, that's what I concentrate on in the early postpartum visits at the office, or if I go do a house call. It's, one of the techniques I learned was closing of the bones. Like you want to just really wrap this mom in a cocoon and just warm her, because now baby is on the outside, which was a furnace for mom, for so long. And Eastern medicine views this postpartum state, as almost a cooler state. So we got to warm from the inside out and just give mom hugs and loving touch every day and grounding, so that she can start to practice being in her physical body again. So like some practical things would be just, a little bit of just placing your hands, like if you don't have anybody, just placing your hands on yourself and touching yourself. And all you have to do is lay your hands on you, different parts of your body, and just breathe there. Breathing is one of the best integration practices you can do postpartum, and breathing into your rib cage, breathing into your lower belly, breathing into your lower back, and actually sending fresh air, fresh oxygen, fresh blood flow to that space. And thanking your womb space for providing so much love and nourishment for your baby and for, just carrying both of y'all through 40 weeks. The other thing I like to do, you've seen this exercise, I think, is a pat down. So you're patting yourself down. This is such a good energy shift. And then you wipe off the energy. That's so good. Grounding, putting your feet on the earth, actually, all of that's so important. Sunshine, those little grounding practices you can do in the first 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 30 days, those are going to be super key. And then if you have the luxury of body work, like chiropractic care, acupuncture, I would do it all, but that's just me. I love body work. Some people don't love body work at all, but I would do all the chiropractic. I would do all the acupuncture. I would do all the massage. And you want it to be intentional and gentle. One of the things I do in chiropractic is, I don't do any side posture during the first couple of visits, which is, that sideline, lower back stuff, because we're healing and, there's still a lot of ligament laxity going on. The even though we can't see it, the body's healing from the inside out. So integration and grounding is like the two words I wish everybody focused on in that first 30 days postpartum.
I love that. And it's like, I think especially if you like fitness and movement, like I do, I love it. It's like one of my favorite ways to take care of myself. I always feel better after, and
Yeah.
I feel like me. But breathing is definitely like one of the top things that was the easiest for me. And I think if anyone had a really difficult labor or a C-section or something where like they can't get out of bed or they don't want to get out of bed, that's something that you can have access to, or even doing like the movements that you talked about. I don't think it has to be like this big thing where
No.
I'm not going to have time for it. You don't need extra time. I feel like and it's the other thing that I really had to wrap my mind around was integrating Eliana into those parts of my life.
Absolutely.
Instead of trying to do everything when she's sleeping, I'm like, okay, like how can I work her into all of this?
Yes.
And like you said, my nervous system affects her nervous system. So I just think that's beautiful advice. And I hope that anyone that is going to be in that season soon takes it.
Yeah, having baby on your chest and just lying there doing breath work, oh, so good, because
Like,
it's going to relax them, you know?
yeah, I will never forget those moments. Um,
Aw.
Okay, so we've talked about like grounding everything. We'll get into some of the IG questions, but one of the really good questions a lot of people had when I asked like, what postpartum exercise fitness questions do you guys have? What do you want to know? They were like, what do I look for in a program? Because there are different programs out there now.
Yeah.
And it's similar. I have a lot of people ask about this in general for like when you're not pregnant and just trying to support your hormones. What do you look for? So in a postpartum program, what would you be looking for?
That's such a good question because, like you said, there's so many out there now. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful that the conversation has evolved over the last decade because, when we started, we were definitely one of the only ones, and there was like, two other ones, but definitely missing the mark on a few things. I think, for me and the way we set up BirthFit was, within our postpartum package, which incorporates everything from lying in to the basics to the general strength and conditioning training. It follows, like, it would take you through 5 months. So let me start. Like, some of the biggest yellow red flags for me are words or phrases that say like, get your mom bod back, get your pre-baby body back. Anything that promotes like flat abs, like that's just, I don't know, like to not say a bad word.
It's a
That is just,
lie. First of
yeah.
all, your body's never going to be the same, and it shouldn't be, and you should be happy about
Exactly.
that.
Yes. Like you have evolved. This is a new chapter. And while you may, in this moment of time, you may not be as fit as, I was Lindsey 2016. That doesn't mean you're not going to be, a more resilient human, 9 months from now, a year and a half from now. The postpartum time, especially like that whole first year postpartum, is such a beautiful time to reset and recalibrate. And we as women get this opportunity. I've seen women that have slowed down and actually done the basics, heal nagging hip injuries, heal lower back stuff, heal things, just because they like totally slowed it down, reset, went from breath to basics to building, a solid general strength and conditioning foundation. However, I've also seen women go back to the gym at 2 weeks, bleed it out, pee in their pants, jump back in way too soon. And I guarantee, I've seen this way too often. You show up 2 years, 3 years later with the labral tear. You show up 2 years later, just totally depleted hormone wise. There's just so like, what was the course? It was Innate Postpartum with Rochelle.
Mm-hmm.
She's an awesome teacher. But one thing she said stuck with me. It's like, how you care for your body postpartum will determine the health of you, the woman, later on in life. It will have a profound effect on your health from that moment forward. And so if you can just honor that pause, honor that slowdown, that's going to be leaps and bounds. But yeah, things you look for. So, one of the things that we do is set a foundation, and that's through the BirthFit basics. And we do this by utilizing developmental milestones and basic human movements. So if you are looking at a program already starts you with load, already has you with volume, already has you doing cardio and conditioning, that's no bueno. I don't even like doing any kind of conditioning until maybe 3 months at the earliest postpartum. I don't even, like in the office, I don't even run blood work. I don't even do thyroid panels, none of that until about 3 months at the earliest postpartum, because your body's still regulating itself. It's figuring itself out. So the last thing I want you to do is go for a run, at 6-8 weeks postpartum.
Yeah.
You've got to have a solid foundation, and that comes with the basic human movements. And you can find the BirthFit basics free on YouTube. They're so important. We have programs, but also if you want to experiment for free, just go do them. They're on YouTube. So I think a foundation is huge. The other thing is, programs that make, like we were talking about, the ones that just lie, like false promises. I don't know what your body's going to look like in 6 months. I don't know how your birth went. What I do know is that every healing timeline is different. And, what we talk about is it is a mind, body, soul connection. And we cannot heal our physical body unless we address our mental and emotional body. And so if we're dealing with prolapse or a diastasis that hasn't healed, it's not all physical. There's no one magic exercise that's going to approximate that DRA if we're still, maybe dealing with some identity stuff and family relationship dynamics that's going on. If prolapse, it's at the root chakra, and sexuality, if intimacy, money stuff hangs out there. So all of it's super connected. So I'd like to say, like, there's no one size fits all model. There's no, if there's a program that promises like, get your abs back in 30 days. No, like, it's a lie. And if they don't start off gradually, with setting a foundation and then building. And after we establish the foundation through the BirthFit basics and breath work, oh, that's the other thing, breath work.
Yeah.
Breath work, Jesus Lord.
It's all I feel like I did for 30 days. Yes. It was great.
If there's a program and they don't address breath, just ask for a refund. But after breath work, after the basics, then we start to get into general strength and conditioning, and that's a foundation in and of itself for sport-specific stuff. So sport-specific being CrossFit, sport-specific being track and field, being soccer, being Pilates, being yoga, being spin, whatever. And in that, we work on a lot of asymmetrical stuff, progressive overload. So there's a progression. It's not just wham, bam, let's go run a 5K. I think there's a gradual increase in load, a gradual increase in volume, but you have to have that foundation, and that foundation starts with breath.
Yeah. So I think too, because it's like when breath will automatically incorporate your pelvic floor.
Oh, for sure.
And I think that I think if someone's looking at postpartum programs and they don't talk about breath work, pelvic floor health, like anything like that, I just, that would make me like want to run. And we actually had a question about pelvic floor that I feel like would be perfect timing for now. Someone asked, how do you know if you need to work on pelvic floor muscles postpartum? Everyone does. So do you want to talk about that and like how that could show up in a program?
Yes. So I'm so glad you said breath and pelvic floor, because you're absolutely right. Like, our pelvic floor does not work in isolation. And if you could see me, like, I'm putting my hands up, and the diaphragm and pelvic floor are basically parallel to each other. And when you inhale, everything lowers and expands expands 360 degrees, your pelvic floor lowers, your diaphragm lowers. And then when you exhale on a regular human breath, they all naturally return back to neutral. There's no sucking up and in, there's no pulling your belly button to your spine. It's just like that natural diaphragm breath that's happening. When we start to incorporate, a little stability breath, as we call it, or task-specific intra-abdominal pressure, or bracing, or starting to, especially postpartum, we're learning to manage our internal pressure system again. Then we have to basically work with that exhale. So we inhale the same, and we try to maintain that expansion that was gained on the inhale. We try to maintain that expansion on the exhale. And so we do this in the BirthFit basics without load, without increasing volume, just in a safe space with a dead bug, and with our earned range of motion there. But if you think about this, we do this in a neutral spine in the sagittal plane to start out with, because that's where babies learn to move. If you go back to developmental kinesiology, we as humans, no matter where we're at in this world, we all learn to move and go through the same milestones, no matter where we're at in this world. It's just innate in us. Like it's so wild. But we start in that sagittal plane. And if you watch a baby and they're doing happy baby, or they're doing a dead bug type of thing, they are learning to use their internal pressure system. They're learning to stabilize with their diaphragm. They're learning to basically use their breath to support them, use contact with the ground to manage their internal pressure system. And side note, babies are actually born with diastasis, but as they go, you'll see it on them like a little cone. As they go through their developmental milestones, it approximates. Doesn't happen overnight. There's no, this magic exercise that approximates it. They have to go through these milestones and start to incorporate these, anatomical slings and different planes of motion that start to approximate that. So pelvic floor. Oh man. If when I started in the birth world, the Kegel was everything. And I'm so glad that people have woken up to Kegel's not the one size fits all. Do 100 of those a day after birth and you're healed. No.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that I feel like women miss are relaxation of the pelvic floor.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's one of the biggest things we concentrate on leading up to labor and birth. And you can do this just by breathing in simple poses and stretches, like child's pose, like happy baby, or like a gentle straddle stretch. There's a great book called The Body Keeps Score. And every single experience hangs out in our body unless, we process it. If you see an animal like a dog and they go through a bath or an experience, they shake it out. Like they are getting it out of their nervous system. And we haven't really learned to do that in our culture or society. So, we're talking about coming back down from the mountain, or, with us as women, when we go through micro traumas in life, if we're not able to shake it out or dance it out or yell it out, then that stuff's going to hang out in us. And pelvic floor notoriously holds a lot of trauma for women. And, one of the things I see with women is just this hunched over, almost fetal position. And when I see that, I automatically know their pelvic floor is tight. I know they haven't breathed into their pelvic bowl. There's no, it might be a little hollow space that we need to address. So children or not, I think everybody needs to address their pelvic floor and, make sure it's moving and not just stuck in one position. So huge work on it. Just send some love to your pelvic floor.
I love that. So if say a program, maybe they talk about pelvic floor, but if they only have things to strengthen, like Kegel type things, then also look for a relaxation. Are they doing anything to relax?
Totally.
I would say I feel like most people need to relax more than
absolutely. I would say 90% of women that have urinary incontinence issues, it's because they have a too tight hypertonic pelvic floor. And so the first thing we do in the office is downregulate their nervous system, relax their pelvic floor. Start from there. We got to unwind and then build back up.
I love that.
Yeah.
I know that can be hard to grasp, especially after birth, but it's like especially if you're like pushing for a long time and maybe you don't quite, I didn't grasp like exactly how to push correctly at first. It like took me a little bit. So like you're most likely going to be dealing more with tightness. Like that was my main issue after that of over anything. But luckily I knew the breath stuff to like address it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do more questions. This was a really good one. Can you do some light stretching / exercises 0 to 2 weeks postpartum?
Totally. I would err on the side of exercises rather than stretching. Remember, there's still relaxin hanging out in your joints and tissues. And even though, the highest concentration was, right at the end of the third trimester and at birth, if you're breastfeeding, relaxin is going to be hanging out. But I would say gentle exercises like the BirthFit basics, like breathing, lower back, just gentle movement, shin box flows, glute bridges, things like that. And, during this time, like no more than 5 to 10 reps just to get some blood flowing. I think that's great.
I'm going to have to like link to your YouTube. I love that you guys have that on there just because people are going to be like, what the shin box?
It's all on there.
Yeah, I'll link to the YouTube channel for everyone listening so you can go check it out. And even like I did your lying in program for 30 days and it's like there is some very light movement, but it's not really like, it's not exercise. It's like breath work and just like paying attention, like how does it feel? Like how does it feel when you do this and stuff?
Yeah,
so.
Pelvic tilts, posture stuff, segmental cat-cows. Yeah.
Which is my favorite thing.
I love that movement so much.
And it's funny because it felt good at first, but now because my daughter is huge, she's like over 20 pounds. It's like I need to do that every single day.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a good one. Is there ever a point with sleep deprivation that working out is contraindicated?
Yeah. I mean, sleep deprivation is something to be mindful of. And I'll share an experience with you. This was actually one of my celebrities in LA, and she was pregnant, had her second baby, a beautiful home birth experience. And I was going over there once a week afterwards. And, you can just tell when somebody's not getting enough sleep. Like in new mom life, it comes in chunks. It comes in like ideally quality chunks. And this mom, I could just tell she wasn't taking those chunks and wasn't, sleeping when baby slept or, had a little bit of anxiety. And I asked her one day, I was like, when's the last time you actually slept? And she said, well, to be honest, I think it's been like 2 to 3 days. I was like, oh, okay. So what else is going on? Like, how are we feeling? How's poop? How's digestion? Are you stressed? Like, her husband wasn't in town. He had to leave. So it was just her and the nanny, thank God. But ended up, she had to go on a small dose of anxiety medication. And then, she did that for about a month and came off. But there was, some big signs of postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression going on. So I'm really mindful of sleep postpartum. I think it's way more important than exercise. Especially in the first trimester, there's a lot going on. Like, give yourself permission to nap, give yourself permission to sleep. But I would say if you are irritated with people, if, change, like, transitions are hard, change is hard, like even just like running to the store or putting kiddo in the car, if it's like a huge event, a huge obstacle, and you haven't had quality chunks of sleep, like pay attention to that, ask for help, reach out. I promise you exercise can come later for sure.
Yeah. And I feel like I slowly started to do stuff, but there was plenty of weeks where I'm like, I just don't feel like it, or I didn't get good sleep one night and I would just skip it. And I mean, I honestly feel like doing less postpartum helped me recover. Like,
Absolutely. There's this mantra we like. It's called slow is fast. Like totally embrace that mantra
yeah.
postpartum. Less is more
Yeah,
for
and
sure.
like not nothing. And I think it's just like doing something more than nothing. Like if you say like you are super stressed and you didn't get sleep, but you're like, I don't really feel like working out, but I need to do something. It's like then maybe you go back to some of those basic movements and
Absolutely.
stretches. You know,
Totally.
it can be hard. I know if you're a perfectionist mindset, it's hard to do that, but have a backup plan. That helped me a
Yeah.
lot. Okay, how can you make sure you strengthen diastasis recti versus make it worse?
Mm. Okay. So we talked a little bit about this already, but anything that is extreme flexion, like if you're in the CrossFit world, toes to bar, GHD sit-ups, regular sit-ups, crunches, bicycle crunches, or knees to elbow in yoga. Those kind of things are going to be like extreme flexion. You're like rounding your back, you're doing an abdominal sit-up crunch situation, and those are going to make the DRA worse because you're focusing only on one muscle group. And that is your rectus abdominis. That's your six-pack washboard abs. If they're in there, under there, wherever. But those, like when we only focus on one muscle group, we neglect other planes of motion. We neglect other parts of our body. So one thing we always say, when a woman becomes pregnant, she's fully pregnant. She's in season, starting to train for birth, mind, body, soul. So we start that shift initially in the first trimester. Like we take out anything like that. And this might be hard if you want to still go to your gym community. And sometimes, when I was coaching in LA at our gym, we would just say, oh, she's nursing a shoulder injury. Just maybe we didn't want to announce it to the whole gym.
Yeah.
But
Good point.
those things are going to like being very one movement, one exercise focused, or if you go back to sport specific stuff too soon,
Okay.
that's going to make a difference, because maybe you are a thrower or a volleyball player. You are hitting only from one side. That's like if I'm pulling my sweater, but if we're pulling the fascia this way, that's going to affect everything from the chain. Like this diagonal chain is going to affect everything in the anterior, the frontal chain, back. It's going to affect all of it. The fascia has a huge influence on our body. The other thing is it takes, we like to say we're building a strong and dynamic core, one that is like flexible and one that has strength, not just a rigid core, a washboard abs. And most of the time, the washboard abs are actually on the weaker side. A very strong core is one that, maybe you can see some abs, maybe you can't, but there's somebody that's able to have flexibility and strength in all planes of motion. All movement originates from the core. And you need two things in order to have a strong and dynamic core. One, you need that task-specific intra-abdominal pressure. So you've got to be able to manage your own internal pressure system. And that's going to be different from picking up a 20-pound baby as compared to picking up, a 200-pound deadlift. You're going to use a different amount of pressure there. The other thing you need is all the spinal muscles, all the intersegmental spinal stabilizers playing the game, working in harmony. And that's why I say this one muscle isolation stuff does nobody any good. Like you don't walk across the room by just contracting your pelvic floor. Like you have so many muscles playing the game. There's, I think this was a study I read recently that no matter what's going on with the diaphragm, the pelvic floor is always doing something, like we
Yeah.
were talking about earlier. So you need those two things in order to have a strong and dynamic core. It's simple, not easy. right? So you
Yeah.
need managing your own internal pressure system, and you need all the muscles playing the game together. So if one muscle is overactive, like erectus abdominis, then what's the obliques doing? What's the transverse abdominis doing? How's the pelvic floor? All of those got to play the game together.
And I think that's what's so helpful about the breath work in the beginning is because like you have to
Yeah,
reconnect to your core again because it feels so
absolutely.
different. And especially in like the first like couple months, I feel like was like the biggest difference. And if you can work on that breath work, and I know there was even some like working on that pressure in the lying in
Hmm.
program, and getting used to that again because you're like, how do I even engage my core
Yeah,
right now? Right? It
yeah,
was weird, but you have to like practice doing those
totally.
things again.
And you have to like practice blowing out candles, like,
Yeah.
or, blowing up a little balloon, little things like that.
Yeah. I use the balloon. That was like my favorite technique for really learning how to do the pelvic floor breathing.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a interesting one. At what point does your pelvis feel stable for weighted squats postpartum?
Well, I would love to give you an answer,
I know.
but there is no one size fits all. As I was saying, our postpartum package takes you through 5 months postpartum. And, we update our programs yearly. Like they're always being updated. We ask for feedback all the time. And it's because we keep taking feedback from moms, like actual moms that have done it. They're like, well, I felt this. And if multiple moms feel a certain way, then we're going to change something.
Hmm.
So all of our programs are based on, actual experience of moms, experience of us as doulas, experience of us as doctors, therapists in the field. Um, and so we made that timeline based on like the most common timelines. And, within the postpartum training, at the end of the postpartum package, we start to do squats again. We start to do loaded squats. But I guarantee the ones that we start to do, in that, first couple of weeks are going to feel completely different than the ones at the end of that 5 months. And, one of the things we love is tempo work, like pause work. Tempo work is so great for your joints postpartum,
Yeah.
joints in general. But, you know, from everything that I've read and everything that I've observed, there are cultures, tribes around the world that recommend moms heal 2 to 3 years before having another baby. And that's, to restore nourishment, minerals, nutrients, connective tissue, build the body back.
Hmm.
Um, but based on what women have said, I will, and you'll have to come back to me and see if this is true.
Hmm.
Right around the 9 month to 12 month mark is when women are like, oh, I can squat heavy again, or I can run my race, or
Yeah.
I feel solid. And that's doing everything, in a very intentional manner.
Yeah.
Whereas if they start and go to the gym too early, or do double unders, okay, we're just going to jump in and do double unders, or running, at 4 weeks, 5 weeks postpartum, I guarantee there's some sort of pelvic floor dysfunction that shows up within that first year postpartum.
Yeah.
So yeah, 9 months to 12 months is kind of that sweet spot window.
That's really interesting. I'll let you know. I feel like in the beginning it's not even like a physically can I do this? It's more of like for me it's been my nervous system. Like
Yes.
there's just so many changes happening in the
Yes.
beginning, and I'm sure it has to do, especially for different women. It's like if you were going back to work, it's like I remember I felt great and then I went back to work and I was like, oh, okay, this is
Yeah.
awful. Like my body and my nervous system were shot. It was just such a big change and like such a like very ugly learning experience that it's like I really took a step back. I still did
Good.
movement and worked out, but I was like, there is no way I'm even going to attempt to do anything heavy, even if physically I feel like I could do it because I won't recover from it.
Right.
And it's not going to make me feel better. So I've gotten this advice from my other entrepreneur friends that are moms, and they're like, don't make any important choices about your business, about your life until your baby's 9 months old.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
now I'm like, I feel like it's probably like physical, nervous system, like mental, emotional. So like that, when you said 9 months, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like, it's for everything. Just 9 months for
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's so funny. Okay, and I did struggle with hemorrhoids. I figured it out, but I'm curious to hear your
Mm.
answer. How can you reduce/avoid hemorrhoids when getting back into lifting postpartum?
Oh, so this is a great question because hemorrhoids are actually a sign of pelvic floor dysfunction.
Yeah.
Um, and one of my friends, great friends, she deals with them. Um, she is a firefighter and she's just an awesome, awesome source. Um, so we go back to breath. We go back to
Yeah.
breath. We go back to breath. um, and there's a great blog we have. I think it's called "I Got Hemorrhoids: Tip to Heal and Provide Relief." But one of the things that we do, like I said, go back to diaphragm breathing, and then within the BirthFit basics, there's a pose called high bear, where the pelvis is above the rib cage, and we breathe in that position. That is huge. Okay, if high bear is too much for you, do tabletop and your pelvis is in alignment with your rib cage. That's going to be huge. Other things that have provided relief are being mindful of, like, you talk about mineral intake a ton. Like, you've got to nourish yourself. Salt intake is huge. Doing things around the house, like incorporating a squatty potty, asking for help, like actually, being mindful of how you pick up baby, the chores you have around the house, like the dishes, things like that, being mindful of that. Getting adjusted is huge, and downregulating your nervous system is a big one. And going back to breath. I didn't say this earlier, but I feel like one of the things I say is, like, pregnancy is a great revealer, and I feel like everything, whether it be, I've dealt with hemorrhoids, or I've dealt with asthma, or I've dealt with anxiety, or what. I feel like at some point in the motherhood transition, our little Achilles heel is going to rear its head. And we may have 2 or 3 Achilles heels. But I feel like it's going to rear its head and it's going to say, how are you doing with this lesson? What do you got? I got something for you right now. But yeah, hemorrhoids postpartum, I think, gosh, what were we looking into with my friend? I think it is related to the maternal side of
Oh,
healing, and making sure, being mindful of relationships with mom or grandma or sisters and things like that. And she went and did a ton of work on healing her relationship with her mom, and she's now pregnant with the second one, and it hasn't been as intense. It's actually been
interesting.
great. Yeah. There's also, I would strongly recommend acupuncture for hemorrhoids. There's an adjustment that I do in the office that's like right on an acupuncture point. And then, if you're seeing an acupuncturist, I think it's along the lines of like spleen deficiency.
Hmm.
So getting in to see an acupuncturist would be super beneficial.
Very interesting. I had
Yeah.
them pop up at like around 4 to 5 weeks. I had them like in like 3 weeks and they went away and they popped up again. I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah.
And I saw my pelvic floor PT and she was like, I had like 3 pretty tight spots and she was like, it's a pelvic floor issue. It's not
Yeah.
like like we think it's like more of it could be digestion, I think, for some, but it's like that also goes back to why can you not release like from your pelvic floor.
Yeah.
So breath work was it, like literally they were
Huge.
gone. And just, be if you start I scaled back on working out a little bit and did breath work and I haven't had issues since, but that's really interesting about the
Mm.
maternal and sister like
Right.
relationships. Um do you have a few more minutes?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Someone asked about reducing back pain postpartum. I don't know if if they always had back pain or if it just came up like with pregnancy or what.
Okay. So what tends to happen postpartum is because everything just involved our core shuts down. And now we're bending over, doing these like minor hip hinges, picking up baby, putting baby down. So our back takes the brunt of the work. You can start, this is where I would say, if your back is bothering you, it's time to start doing things like the BirthFit basics, getting adjusted, going back to breath work, because your lumbar spine, it's doing all the work, but it doesn't have to be doing all the work. And I do see that a lot, especially in that like 2-month to 3-month mark postpartum.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I love that. I didn't deal with that, but I was like anticipating it because I had such bad back labor, and I was like, I wonder if it's going to bother me like forever. And it didn't, but the women I do know that had back pain, I think it was a movement thing.
Mm-hmm.
I really like this question. Is it a good idea to start strength training postpartum if you've never done any strength training prior to having a baby?
Heck yes. And take it slow. Like,
Yeah.
go slow. I get this question all the time. Like, I've never done exercise. Can I exercise in my pregnancy? I've never done any strength training postpartum. Can I do it? Yes. Hire a smart coach, join one of our programs. Just don't do it on your own. Cause I think there's so much that literally a lady just came into the office this week that started strength training because her husband set up a garage gym. She was like, third baby. Okay. I'm ready to get in shape. And like totally, sprained her back. So
Oh
now
no.
we're yeah. So I think if you set some intentions, set some goals, hire somebody, join an online program, have like the right support in your corner, and it'll be the best thing you've ever done, honestly.
I love that. I'm like, it's accessible. Anyone can do it. It's
Yes.
just like, it doesn't matter. Your body's not broken because you had a baby. I think
Mm-hmm.
if anything, I'm like, this could be like a good time to start because you kind of have
Absolutely.
to, you have to go really slowly and you can't just like add a bunch of weights and stuff like that.
Yes.
Um, but I was like, I think that'll be a helpful one for people. Okay, last one. How can you fit in exercise postpartum? Like, how do you fit it into
Mm.
your day to day?
Mm. So you touched on this a little bit earlier by starting to incorporate Eliana into your breathing and your exercises. I think that is key. And the moms that figure this out and let go of the perfection of like, this is what my training looked like before, it's got to look like this now, or like I need an hour to train, that sort of mindset. Let that go. That ship has sailed. It's not this chapter or this season of life. But if you can start to incorporate baby, in the BirthFit basics, it's really easy. He or she can like lay on the blanket and just stare at you. You can do bird dog over them.
Mm-hmm.
um, they are watching you. They're watching your movements. So make sure you do your movements correctly because they're picking up those movement patterns.
I
But I
love
think
that.
they want to like see mom, see dad, see whoever like do things, move and explore, because that's how they start to interact with the world, just through observation. The other thing I would say is like letting go of that perfectionism that I got to do this whole training day in an hour. Some women will do the BirthFit basics and they'll do like part of it in the morning and part of it in the afternoon. They'll break it up throughout the day, maybe do a section in the morning, section at lunch, section at dinner. Other times, maybe we're in the training phase of it, the general strength and conditioning part, and there's that mind body connection piece. Maybe they do that first thing in the morning, and then they do the little warm up, and then they call it good. Okay, maybe the next day they do the mind body connection piece, and then they do more of the the conditioning piece that shows up. So there's flexibility in it, and within our programs, there's a chat section. We talk if people have questions. We have a monthly support call, but being okay with that flexibility and not being so rigid in the training department, I think is a big thing. And just knowing that, you're never going to get this time back with your little one. And I know you want to exercise. Like, I love exercise too, But, sometimes I'm like, okay, my husband wants me to just like sit down and have dinner or lunch or be present with him for whatever we're doing. It can wait. I can do this tomorrow, or we can go on a walk later. Baby wearing walks are awesome. Babies watching you interact with the world. They're seeing how you take in that stranger or that neighbor or whoever, and they're learning how to just regulate their systems based on you. So the more flexibility you have, the more incorporation of baby, the smoother I think it goes.
Yeah. And I know it's like I have friends that all do it different ways. Like I just incorporate Eliana because her naps, I'm like, I'm working. Like I have to work during that time. So and she doesn't mind being in the garage and working out with me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it once she's been up for 2 hours. I do try to time it. Like once she's like woken up, she's eaten, she's happy, I know I'll have a solid 30 to 40 minutes. That's what's worked for me. Yeah. I have friends that they're like, I can't do it that way. And I just wait to work out until my husband gets home. He takes the baby. Like that works too. I just don't mind it. And I'd rather get it done in the morning. So it's just like, I think experimentation is key, and just get rid of your expectations. Just drop. Yes. Don't even lower them. Just drop them. So like
forget about everything you did before.
Yeah. And just have fun with it. Like sometimes Eliana gets fussy when I'm working out, and I stop and I talk to her and I give her a different toy or something, and she's fine. And I go back to it. It's like, but this is where the nervous system part comes in, because if you can't handle stuff like that, if that kind of thing is stressing you out a ton, then maybe instead of getting that workout in, you take a nap or do some breath work or go for a walk or something like that. Because that should be like a huge red flag that something's off balance.
Absolutely.
And to not like feel bad about that, give yourself grace. Like this is a huge learning time, whether you've had a baby already or not. It's not the same. Every baby is different. And then you have more than one. So that's a lot. So, but yeah, that would be like my advice. But I love this. I think this is going to be helpful. I hope that people get to listen to this before they give birth so they can have some of this in mind for their postpartum experience. And I just can't thank you enough for being here and chatting with me.
Absolutely. Happy to be here and happy to answer any questions. I know there's probably some we didn't get to and some that will come up as people listen to this. So
yeah, so I'll make sure you guys check out Lindsey. She has a few different Instagrams. BirthFit Instagram is just at BirthFit. If you want to follow along with that, get information there. If you are wanting to follow more with Lindsey's chiropractic practice, I'm going to link that one as well. And then just her personal Instagram, I will link that one in the show notes too. And the BirthFit YouTube. So you guys can just start getting familiar with some of these movements that Lindsey was mentioning throughout the episode. And then that hemorrhoids blog, I'll find it and link it, because the hemorrhoids are just rough, and I get it. It's like
they're miserable
postpartum. Yeah. You're just like, what's happening? How am I bleeding out of my butt? I just like birthed a baby. Like this is unreal.
Yes.
I was literally just like, why? But yeah, and Lindsey also has a podcast that I'm going to link as well. And there's tons of information. So there's more than enough free resources. And if you guys need more help, I just wrapped up my 5 months of the BirthFit postpartum package. And I was like, 5 months is kind of random, but now that I'm here, I'm like, no, it's not. It's like, it's like perfectly timed. And I really am in like a whole different season physically and mentally. So, it was perfect. I can't recommend it enough. And
thank you.
Yeah, I think that's it. So we'll see you guys next episode.
Awesome. Thank y'all.